So, for the first technological advancement that I'll be talking about is photography and realism. So, photography intensified the notion of realism that is the real, the natural, and it was different obviously from our modern photography, where today you can put a filter on things, you can edit stuff, but this photography was very raw and it was in fact very real. There was the daguerreotype, which put the image on a piece of metal, the raw image, and then there was also the Caillebotte, which would put images on paper. And I think that since it's harder for some people, even I'm sure back then, to look at a painting and be like, oh, well, what does that exactly mean? I think photography can show it even better. And the fact that photography is real, it's that moment taken raw, I think that just backs up the notion for realism. And then arts and crafts, there is the industrialization, and in Britain it was hard, gruesome labor. A lot of people were injured, and so William Morris, he wanted to bring back the creativity in art, but also I guess kind of like a uniqueness, because in mechanics it only does, each thing does one thing over and over and over again, like a donut machine. I mean, they make 100 donuts in an hour, but there's no uniqueness to it, there's no individualism. So he did not exactly reject mechanics completely, because there are good uses for it, but he did want to put pleasure back into labor for the working class, because when industrialization broke out, there wasn't pleasure in work. And I think that's really significant for the arts and crafts movement, which is funny because arts and crafts today is like making paper mache and stuff, but back then it was about creativity and bringing in your own, how do I say this correctly, just a unique way that you do things, but also it be influenced in other places. And then for Impressionism, I really liked this one a lot, which is why I chose it. I think the technological advancement for Impressionism wasn't always exactly like the technique of the painters, and they did broader brushstrokes and they mixed the colors and the lighting. I think it was more of the modernized landscapes, especially in Paris when it started. The renovation of the city of Paris inspired a lot of Impressionists. And it makes sense, because they lived in that one city for so long and it's only been one way, and then some person comes in and they change it to where how we would see it today, which the modernization was called, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but Haussmannization, and it was larger streets, and what we see today is people always walking and taking in the city. That's what it was. And it's kind of like in New York City as well, with the big boulevards and people walking around, mulling about and socializing. That's exactly what it was. So one artist, again, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name completely right, but Gustave Caillebotte, not sure. He made Paris Rainy Day in 1877, which was an oil painting that showed the way that exact new modernized landscape of Paris and how people interacted with it by this one man in his business, his trench coat and his top hat, walking through the city and taking it in. And you can see in the background the other people milling about. And so, and I think the thing that all three of these, photography and the industrialization and modernized landscaping, have in common, I'd have to say, is obviously they all have a very significant impact, but I think the impact is so large that it even floods into the 21st century, and each advancement changed into what we see today. And like the streets in Paris, before I learned about Impressionism, I thought Paris was just made like that. I didn't know that the big streets and the trees lining the walkways was a newer that was not original when it was founded. So I thought that was really interesting. I hope that all made sense. I felt like I was a little scrambly, but thank you for listening. Good luck.